Emma Carter stared at her phone, tears threatening to spill onto her already splotchy cheeks. The bank account balance glared back at her. 14 down 73s, not enough for rent, not enough for groceries, and definitely not enough for the diapers her 6-month-old daughter Lily desperately needed. She hadn't slept in what felt like days, her body aching with exhaustion as Lily's wails echoed through their tiny one-bedroom apartment. The walls seemed to close in around her as she scrolled through her contacts, pride crumbling with each swipe. 3 months ago, when James had walked out on them, claiming he wasn't ready for fatherhood, Emma had been certain she could manage on her own. She'd picked up extra shifts at the cafe, stretched every dollar, and swallowed her pride to accept hand-me-downs from co-workers. But now, with Lily battling a persistent diaper rash and Emma's paycheck still 3 days away, desperation clawed at her throat. Her finger hovered over her sister Megan's contact. They hadn't spoken since the baby shower, when Megan had pointedly suggested adoption might be Emma's best option. The thought still stung, but Lily's needs came before Emma's pride. She began typing a message. "Meg, I know we haven't talked, but I'm in a really tight spot. I need $40 for diapers to get through until payday. I promise I'll pay you back next week." Emma's thumb trembled as she hit send, the message disappearing into the digital void. She set the phone down and lifted Lily from her makeshift playpen, the baby's soft whimpers breaking her heart all over again. "It's okay, sweet girl," she whispered, pressing a kiss to Lily's forehead. "Mommy's figuring it out." Across town in the penthouse suite of the city's most exclusive high-rise, Alexander King's phone buzzed on his desk. The 32-year-old real estate magnate barely glanced at the notification, his attention focused on the architectural plans spread before him. His newest development, a luxury residential tower that would redefine the city skyline, was behind schedule, and the meeting with investors loomed tomorrow. "Mr. King?" His assistant Rebecca called from the doorway. "Your 4 o'clock is here." Alexander nodded, finally reaching for his phone to silence it before the meeting. The unknown number and message preview caught his eye. "Meg, I know we haven't talked, but I'm in a really tight spot." He frowned, his thumb hovering over the delete button. Clearly a wrong number, and he had neither time nor patience for distractions. Yet something in the preview's desperate tone made him open the message. Reading it fully, he felt an unexpected pang of something, sympathy, curiosity. He couldn't quite name it. Alexander had built his empire from nothing, climbing from the foster care system to become one of the city's most powerful men. They called him the Alpha King in business circles. Ruthless, demanding, and unfailingly successful, he'd earned his reputation by showing no weakness, no mercy to competitors or underperforming employees. Yet the message's raw vulnerability struck a chord. $40. Such an insignificant sum to him, but clearly everything to this stranger. "Mr. King," Rebecca prompted again. "Tell them I need 5 minutes," he replied, his fingers already typing a response before his rational mind could intervene. "Wrong number, but I'm curious, why are you out of diapers 3 days before payday?" Emma nearly dropped her phone when it chimed with a response. Her heart sank as she read the first words, "wrong number," but the question that followed made her pause. Someone had received her desperate plea, and rather than ignoring it, they'd asked a question. The simple human acknowledgement of her struggle brought fresh tears to her eyes. "I'm so sorry for texting you," she replied quickly. "My baby's father left us 3 months ago, and I've been juggling bills. Had to fix my car last week to keep my job, and that ate the diaper money." "I shouldn't have bothered you," Alexander read the response, a frown deepening the lines around his mouth. He should stop this exchange now, direct the woman to social services, block the number, focus on the $1 million deal waiting in his conference room. Instead, he found himself typing, "What's your Venmo?" Emma stared at the 2-word message in disbelief. Surely this stranger wasn't offering to help. Her fingers trembled as she replied with her username, adding, "But please don't feel obligated. This isn't your problem." Alexander transferred $300 without further comment, then silenced his phone and strode into the meeting, pushing the exchange from his mind. When Emma's phone chimed with the notification, she gasped audibly. $300, not 40. 300. Enough for diapers, groceries, and to catch up on the electric bill, threatening to disconnect service. The username on the transfer, A. King, gave her no clues about her unexpected benefactor. "Thank you," she typed quickly, This is more than I asked for, and more than I deserve. I promise I'll pay you back even if it takes time." She didn't expect a response, but one came almost immediately. "No repayment necessary. Good luck." The curt reply should have ended their interaction, but Emma, overwhelmed by gratitude and riding an emotional wave of relief, sent one more message. "You've just saved us this week. I wish I could thank you properly." Alexander saw the message during a break in his meeting, something in the woman's genuine gratitude breaking through his carefully constructed walls. Against his better judgment, he replied, "Buy the diapers. Take care of your child. That's thanks enough." For the first time in months, Emma slept through the night, Lily comfortable in fresh diapers and with a full belly. The next morning she woke with renewed determination. The stranger's kindness had given her breathing room, but she needed a sustainable solution. After dropping Lily at her neighbor Mrs. Peterson's apartment, Emma headed to her shift at Riverside Cafe with a plan forming. That same morning, Alexander's driver took an unexpected detour due to construction, forcing them down an unfamiliar street lined with small businesses. As they idled at a red light, Alexander noticed a "Help Wanted" sign in the window of a cafe, Riverside Cafe. Something about the name triggered a memory from his childhood, a warm place where a kind waitress had sometimes slipped him free hot chocolate during the bitter winters when his foster mother had locked him out. "Pull over," he instructed his driver impulsively. Inside Riverside Cafe, Emma was approaching her manager, Sarah, about picking up additional shifts when the bell above the door chimed. A tall man in an impeccably tailored suit entered, looking startlingly out of place among the cafe's worn charm. Something about his commanding presence made conversations falter and heads turn. "Welcome to Riverside," Emma said automatically, customer service smile in place despite her exhaustion. "Table for one?" Alexander met the young woman's gaze, taking in her tired eyes and the name tag pinned to her faded uniform. Something about her seemed familiar, though he was certain they'd never met. "Just coffee to go," he replied, his attention caught by a photo behind the counter. A smiling baby girl with bright eyes and dimpled cheeks. "Your daughter?" he asked, nodding toward the picture as Emma prepared his order. "Yes." Emma smiled genuinely for the first time that day. "Lily." "She's 6 months old and the reason I haven't slept properly in half a year." Alexander felt an unexpected smile tug at his lips. "I imagine it's worth it." "Every sleepless second," Emma confirmed, handing him the coffee. "That'll be $3.50. As he paid, Alexander noticed the "Help Wanted" sign again. "You're hiring?" "Part-time barista," Sarah interjected, stepping forward with interest at the well-dressed customer. "Are you looking for someone?" Alexander's mind worked quickly. "Actually, I own several businesses in the area. I'm always looking for reliable people." He produced a business card, sleek black with embossed silver lettering, Alexander King, CEO, King Enterprises. Emma nearly dropped the card when he handed it to her directly. "If you're interested in better hours and pay, my assistant could arrange an interview." Before Emma could process the offer, Alexander's phone rang. Glancing at the screen, he nodded curtly. "I need to take this." "Think about it," he said, then turned and walked out, already speaking into his phone about property acquisitions and projected returns. Emma stared at the card in her hand, the name suddenly connecting with her mysterious benefactor from the previous night. A. King, Alexander King, the same man who had just stood in her cafe, the same man who had sent her $300 when she'd asked a stranger for $40. Her heart raced as she pulled out her phone and stared at their brief text exchange, then back at the business card. It couldn't be a coincidence. Somehow fate had connected her desperate text message to one of the wealthiest men in the city. And now he was offering her a job. As Emma tried to make sense of this extraordinary turn of events, she had no way of knowing that Alexander was already instructing his assistant to research Emma Carter, or that his driver was circling back to Riverside Cafe so he could accidentally encounter her again. She couldn't possibly imagine that their brief meeting had awakened something in Alexander King that he'd thought long buried, a connection to another human being that went beyond business transactions and power plays. And neither of them could predict how their lives were about to become irrevocably intertwined, all because of a mistaken text message asking for money to buy diapers. Emma couldn't focus for the remainder of her shift. Her hands trembled slightly as she served customers, her mind racing with questions. Why would Alexander King, CEO of a major corporation, offer her a job after a chance encounter? Was it charity, pity, something else entirely? And what were the odds that her desperate text had reached someone with the means to help so effortlessly? "You okay, Em?" Sarah asked, nudging her gently as they restocked napkins. "You've been spacing out since that suit came in." Emma fingered the business card in her pocket. "I'm fine. Just thinking about childcare options if I pick up more hours." The lie came easily, though guilt followed. She hadn't told anyone about her financial crisis or the mysterious text message savior. It felt too personal, too vulnerable, and now too unbelievable. When her shift ended, Emma collected Lily from Mrs. Peterson, handing the elderly woman a box of tea purchased with her newfound funds. "You seem different today, Mrs. Peterson observed, bouncing Lily on her hip. "Less weight on your shoulders," Emma smiled. "Just a good day. Things might be looking up." At home, after Lily was fed and settled, Emma finally allowed herself to examine the business card properly. The embossed letters caught the light as she turned it between her fingers. King Enterprises. She searched the name online and gasped at the results. Alexander King wasn't just wealthy, he was in another stratosphere entirely. Self-made billionaire, real estate mogul, philanthropist with a reputation for ruthlessness in business. Articles described him as brilliant but cold, demanding perfection from everyone in his orbit. Most photos showed him in formal attire, expression serious, often flanked by models at charity galas. Nothing about him suggested the type of person who would send money to a stranger or offer a job to a struggling waitress. Her phone felt heavy in her hand as she debated texting the number again. Would it seem ungrateful to question his motives, presumptuous to take him up on his offer? Before she could decide, her phone chimed with a new message. "Did you consider my offer? AK." Emma's heart raced. He had kept her number. He remembered her. "I did," she replied carefully. "But I'm confused. Why would someone like you offer a job to someone like me?" The response came quickly. "Someone like you?" Emma bit her lip. "A single mum with no degree and a resume full of service jobs." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, "I have a position that needs filling. You seem resourceful. The cafe is closing next month anyway. The building's been sold for redevelopment." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. The cafe was closing. Her only source of income gone. She hadn't heard anything about this from Sarah. "How do you know that?" she typed. "I bought the building. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. King Tower. Rebecca will email details. Bring the baby if needed." Emma stared at the message in disbelief. Alexander King had bought the building where she worked. Was he responsible for her imminent unemployment? The audacity of offering her a job after effectively taking away her current one made anger flare in her chest. She began typing a heated response, then stopped. Lily's future had to come before her pride. If the cafe was closing regardless, she needed options. With shaking fingers, she deleted her angry draft and wrote simply, "I'll be there." Across town, Alexander set his phone down with uncharacteristic uncertainty. His impulse to help this woman made no logical sense. Perhaps it was her resemblance to Mariana, the waitress who had shown him kindness during his darkest childhood days. Or maybe it was the genuine love in her eyes when she spoke of her daughter, something his own mother had never displayed toward him. Whatever the reason, Alexander found himself instructing Rebecca to prepare for the interview with unusual specifications. Make sure the conference room has a comfortable chair for a nursing mother, and find out what time the baby usually naps. Rebecca, who had worked for him for 7 years, raised her eyebrows but said nothing. In all their time together, she had never seen him make accommodations for anyone. The next morning, Emma dressed in her best outfit, a navy pencil skirt and white blouse she'd worn to her cousin's wedding 2 years earlier. Lily, sensing her mother's nervousness, was mercifully cooperative, cooing happily in her second-hand stroller as they navigated public transit to downtown. King Tower stretched impossibly high against the blue sky, glass and steel gleaming in the morning sun. Emma felt small and insignificant as she pushed through the revolving doors into the marble-floored lobby. "Emma Carter for Alexander King," she told the security guard, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. 52nd floor, he replied after checking his tablet. "They're expecting you." The elevator rose with stomach-dropping speed. Emma checked Lily's diaper bag for the third time, making sure she had everything: diapers, wipes, formula, extra clothes, toys. She'd brought enough supplies for an Arctic expedition, terrified of appearing unprepared. When the doors opened, Rebecca was waiting, tall, polished, and intimidating in her tailored grey suit. "Miss Carter," she greeted, eyes flicking briefly to Lily. "This way, please." Rebecca led them not to a conference room but to a spacious office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A plush armchair sat in one corner beside a small table set with water, coffee, and pastries. Most surprisingly, a portable crib had been set up, complete with soft blankets and a mobile. "Mr. King will be with you shortly," Rebecca said. "Please make yourself comfortable. There's a changing table in the adjacent bathroom if needed." Emma stood frozen in disbelief long after Rebecca had left. The level of preparation for her and Lily's comfort was unexpected and, truthfully, a little unsettling. What kind of employer went to such lengths for an interview with a cafe waitress? "Good morning." She turned to find Alexander King standing in the doorway, somehow more imposing than she remembered. In the cafe, he'd been merely a well-dressed customer. Here, surrounded by the trappings of his success, he radiated authority and power. "Mr. King," Emma acknowledged, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "Thank you for seeing me." "Alexander," he corrected, moving to sit behind his desk. "Please sit." Emma carefully positioned Lily's stroller beside her chair, grateful when the baby remained contentedly playing with her teething ring. "Before we discuss potential employment," she began, gathering her courage, "I need to know, did you really buy the building where Riverside Cafe is located?" Alexander's expression remained impassive. "Yes. The purchase was finalized last month. And it's being demolished? Redeveloped," he corrected. "The entire block will become a mixed-use property, retail on the ground floor, residential above." Emma felt her temper flare. "So you're destroying people's livelihoods and homes for another luxury development?" A flicker of surprise crossed Alexander's face at her directness. "The current tenants receive generous relocation packages. The residential component will include affordable housing units." "Did anyone ask if they wanted to relocate?" Emma challenged, her financial precariousness momentarily forgotten in the face of injustice. "That cafe has been there for decades. People depend on it." Alexander leaned forward, eyes narrowing slightly. "Progress requires change, Miss Carter. The building is outdated, the business is struggling. My development will create more jobs and better housing than currently exist." "Easy to say when you're not the one being displaced," Emma muttered. To her surprise, Alexander's lips twitched in what might have been amusement. "You're not afraid to speak your mind. That's refreshing." Before Emma could respond, Lily dropped her teething ring and began to fuss. Without thinking, Emma lifted her from the stroller, settling the baby on her lap. "May I?" Alexander asked, gesturing to Lily. Emma hesitated, then nodded. Alexander moved around the desk and crouched to Lily's eye level, his entire demeanor softening. "Hello there," he said quietly, offering his finger for Lily to grasp. The baby studied him seriously, before breaking into a gummy smile that transformed her face. Something shifted in the room's atmosphere as Alexander smiled back, a genuine expression that reached his eyes and erased years from his face. Emma felt her anger wavering at this glimpse of humanity beneath the corporate exterior. "She has good instincts," Alexander said, straightening. "Now, about the position. I need an executive assistant who can manage my personal affairs. My company work is handled by Rebecca, but my charitable foundation and private matters require someone separate." Emma blinked in confusion. "You want me to be your personal assistant? But I have no experience with—" "You manage to support yourself and a child on cafe wages," he interrupted. "You clearly prioritize effectively, work hard, and problem-solve under pressure. Those skills are more valuable than knowing which fork to use at a business dinner, which can be taught." "Why me?" Emma asked directly. "Is this because of the text message? Because if it's pity—" "I don't do pity," Alexander cut in, his tone hardening. "This is a business decision. I need someone discreet, someone whose loyalty isn't to the highest bidder. The position pays $75,000 annually, includes comprehensive benefits, and offers flexible hours to accommodate your daughter's needs." Emma nearly choked. The salary was more than triple what she made at the cafe. It would change everything. A better apartment, quality childcare, savings for Lily's future. There's a catch, she said slowly, looking for the trap. There had to be one. Alexander's expression remained unreadable. The job requires absolute confidentiality and occasional travel. I'm not an easy person to work for. Ask anyone. I expect excellence without excuses. And if I say no? Then you walk out with a severance package for the cafe closure and we never speak again. The bluntness of his answer was oddly reassuring. At least he wasn't pretending this was anything other than a transaction. When would I start? Emma asked, already calculating childcare options. Monday. You'll have the remainder of this week and weekend to make arrangements. Alexander returned to his chair. Do you accept? Everything in Emma screamed that this was too good to be true, too sudden, too convenient. Yet the practical part of her, the part that had survived abandonment and poverty and sleepless nights, recognized the lifeline being offered. Yes, she said finally. I accept. Good. Alexander nodded, pressing a button on his desk. Rebecca appeared instantly, as if she'd been waiting just outside. Rebecca will handle the paperwork and orientation. I expect you here Monday at 8 a.m. sharp. As Emma signed contract after contract, a strange feeling settled over her, part relief, part trepidation. She had just tied her future to a man she barely knew, a man with the power to buy buildings on a whim and offer life-changing salaries to strangers. What she couldn't possibly know was that as Alexander watched her leave with Lily, he was already making calls to investigate James, the man who had abandoned them. Or that the redevelopment plans for the cafe building now included a dedicated childcare center for employees. Or that for the first time in years, Alexander King had changed his schedule, cancelling an important dinner to review Emma Carter's personnel file himself. Neither of them realized they had just set in motion events that would uncover long-buried secrets, threatening everything Alexander had built and forcing Emma to question everything she thought she knew about herself and the father of her child. Emma's first week working for Alexander King had been a whirlwind of adjustments. The sleek office, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist decor, couldn't have been more different from the homey chaos of Riverside Cafe. Instead of juggling coffee orders and wiping down sticky tables, she now managed Alexander's complex personal calendar, coordinated with his charitable foundation, and fielded calls from people whose names she recognized from business magazines. The learning curve was steep, but Emma attacked each challenge with determination. She'd negotiated with Rebecca to allow Lily in a specially prepared corner of her new office 3 days a week, while Mrs. Peterson watched her the other 2. The arrangement wasn't perfect, but it was working, and the first direct deposit into her bank account had nearly brought her to tears. Miss Carter, Alexander's voice came through the intercom on Friday afternoon. A moment, please. Emma checked that Lily was content in her playpen before entering his office, notepad ready. Over the past 5 days, their interactions had been strictly professional, efficient, respectful, and distant. Sometimes she wondered if he remembered their text exchange at all. Close the door, he instructed without looking up from his computer. Emma complied, taking the seat across from his desk when he gestured to it. How are you finding the position? He asked, finally meeting her eyes. Challenging but manageable, she answered honestly. Rebecca has been helpful with the transition. Alexander nodded. And your daughter? The arrangement is suitable? Yes, thank you. The childcare accommodation is... Emma hesitated, still uncomfortable with his generosity. It's made everything possible. Good. Alexander stood abruptly and moved to the window, hands clasped behind his back. I have a fundraising gala tomorrow evening for the King Foundation. You'll need to attend. Emma blinked in surprise. Me? I thought Rebecca handles your business events. This is personal, not business. The foundation supports foster children transitioning to independence, providing housing, education, and mentorship. Something in his voice shifted, becoming less detached. It's important to me. Emma noted this rare display of personal investment. Of course, what will my role be? Observe. Learn how these events function. Meet key donors. He turned back to face her. Consider it part of your training. I don't have anything appropriate to wear, Emma admitted, thinking of her limited wardrobe. Alexander waved dismissively. There's a boutique on the 40th floor. Tell them to bill me directly. Be ready at 7 p.m. tomorrow. Car will collect you. Emma bit her lip. And Lily, Mrs. Peterson can't babysit on weekends. For a moment, Alexander seemed genuinely surprised, as if he'd forgotten the existence of her child. Then his expression softened almost imperceptibly. Bring her. My penthouse has secure access and multiple bedrooms. She can sleep there while we attend. My housekeeper Maria has grandchildren. She'll watch her. Emma wanted to object to leaving Lily with a stranger, but the logical part of her brain recognized the practicality of the solution. Thank you, that's very thoughtful. Alexander nodded curtly, clearly considering the matter resolved. That will be all. As Emma returned to her desk, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Alexander King than the cold, calculating businessman the world saw. The Foundation's focus on foster children, his unexpected accommodation of Lily, small cracks in his carefully constructed facade that hinted at something deeper. What she didn't know was that Alexander had spent the week conducting his own private investigation. James Wilson, Emma's ex and Lily's father, had disappeared from the city 3 months ago, leaving behind substantial gambling debts, the type of debts that attracted dangerous attention, the type of debts that might eventually lead back to Emma and Lily. Saturday evening arrived with unexpected nerves. Emma stood before the mirror in her apartment, barely recognizing herself in the emerald gown from the boutique. The saleswoman had insisted the color brought out her eyes, and the cut flattered her postpartum figure in ways her regular clothes never did. For the first time in months, she looked like someone who hadn't spent the night before mixing formula at 3 a.m. "What do you think, Lilybug?" she asked her daughter, who responded with delighted babbles from her bouncer seat. "Too much?" The doorbell rang precisely at 7 p.m. Emma gathered Lily and the overnight bag she'd packed with excessive care, then opened the door to find not a driver, but Alexander himself standing in the hallway. He wore a tuxedo that probably cost more than 6 months of her cafe salary, his dark hair styled perfectly, his posture impeccable. For a fleeting moment, something like appreciation flickered in his eyes as he took in her appearance. "You look appropriate," he said, the compliment so clinical it almost made Emma laugh. "High praise," she replied dryly. "Should I have aimed for inappropriate instead?" To her surprise, the corner of Alexander's mouth twitched. "The car is waiting." The drive to Alexander's penthouse was quiet, broken only by Lily's occasional babbling. Emma found herself studying his profile when he wasn't looking. The strong jawline, the intensity in his eyes, the permanent furrow between his brows that suggested he rarely relaxed. Alexander's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of an exclusive building overlooking the park. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased a panoramic view that stole Emma's breath. The space was immaculate, sleek, modern furniture, original artwork, and not a single personal photograph or memento visible. "Maria," Alexander called, and an older woman with kind eyes appeared. "This is Emma and her daughter Lily." Maria smiled warmly. "The little one and I will have a wonderful time, Miss Emma. Don't worry." Despite the woman's grandmotherly demeanor, Emma felt the familiar pang of separation anxiety. Her schedule is in the bag, along with her favorite toy. She might fuss when— "Emma," Alexander interrupted gently. "We need to leave. Lily will be fine." Reluctantly, Emma kissed her daughter's cheek and handed her to Maria, who immediately began cooing in what sounded like Portuguese. Lily, traitorously, seemed perfectly content with the arrangement. The hotel ballroom where the gala was held gleamed with opulence. Crystal chandeliers, ice sculptures, string quartet playing softly in the corner. Emma felt out of place despite her expensive dress, acutely aware that everyone else had earned their position in this room through wealth, connections, or both. "Stay close," Alexander murmured as they entered. "The sharks smell fresh blood." Before Emma could respond, they were surrounded by well-wishers and sycophants. She watched in fascination as Alexander transformed, his usual brusqueness replaced by practiced charm, his responses diplomatic yet decisive. He introduced her simply as "my assistant Emma," offering no further explanation for her presence. An hour into the event, Emma found herself momentarily alone, Alexander having been pulled into a conversation with the mayor. She took the opportunity to examine the photo displays, showcasing the Foundation's work. Apartments for aged-out foster youth, scholarship recipients in graduation gowns, smiling mentors with their mentees. "He built it all himself, you know." Emma turned to find an elegant older woman beside her, champagne flute in hand. "The foundation?" Emma asked. "The Empire?" The woman smiled. "I'm Vivian Pierce. I've known Alexander since he was a scrawny teenager, determined to prove the world wrong." "Emma Carter," she replied, curiosity piqued. "You've known him that long?" Vivian nodded. "My husband was his first investor. Thomas saw something in him, a hunger, a drive. Alexander had nothing back then, just ambition and that remarkable brain of his." "He was in foster care?" Emma asked, connecting the dots from the foundation's focus. "Until he aged out at 18, Vivian's expression darkened. "Horrific childhood. Mother was an addict who surrendered him to the state at 6. Bounced through 7 foster homes, most of them awful. The last family only took him for the stipend, used to lock him out when he misbehaved even in winter." Emma's heart clenched, remembering Alexander's interest in Riverside Cafe, the place where a kind waitress had once given him free hot chocolate. The pieces were starting to fit together. "He doesn't talk about it," Vivian continued. "Probably doesn't want your pity, but it explains a lot about him, don't you think?" Before Emma could respond, she felt a presence behind her. Alexander stood there, expression unreadable. How much had he heard? "Vivian," he greeted coolly, "I see you've met Emma." "Lovely girl," Vivian smiled, unperturbed by his tone. "You always did have an eye for potential, Alexander." Something unspoken passed between them before Vivian excused herself, leaving Emma alone with Alexander and the weight of new understanding. "How much did she tell you?" he asked quietly, eyes fixed on the foundation photos. "Enough to understand why this matters to you," Emma replied, gesturing to the display. Alexander's jaw tightened. "My past is irrelevant to your position." "Is it?" Emma challenged gently. "You help foster children because you were one. You noticed me because I work at a cafe that meant something to you as a child. Our pasts shape everything about us, Alexander." For a moment, something vulnerable flashed across his face. So quickly Emma might have imagined it. Then his mask slipped back into place. "We need to return to the penthouse," he said abruptly. "There's something we need to discuss." "Something about Lily's father." Emma felt her blood run cold. "James? What about him?" "Not here," Alexander replied, already guiding her toward the exit with a hand barely touching her lower back. "This is a private matter." The car ride back to the penthouse was tense with unspoken questions. Emma's mind raced through possibilities, each more alarming than the last. Had James returned? Was he trying to claim custody? Did he want money? When they arrived, Maria reported that Lily had been an angel and was now sleeping soundly in the guest bedroom. Emma checked on her daughter, finding her peacefully asleep, before joining Alexander in his minimalist living room. He stood by the window, silhouette stark against the city lights, a tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. Without turning, he said, "James Wilson has gambling debts, significant ones to dangerous people." Emma sank onto the nearest chair. "How do you know this?" "I had him investigated," Alexander finally faced her. "Standard procedure for anyone connected to my staff." "That's an invasion of privacy," Emma protested, though without much conviction. Part of her had always wondered about James's sudden departure. "It's protection," Alexander countered. "His debts put you and Lily at risk." "How? He's gone. We haven't heard from him in months." Alexander set down his glass and approached, sitting across from her. "These aren't the type of creditors who give up easily. If they can't find him, they might come looking for leverage." The implication sent a chill through Emma. "You think they'd come after us, but we have nothing." "They don't know that." Alexander leaned forward, his intensity almost palpable. "I've taken steps to ensure your safety. Additional security for your apartment building. A new phone with enhanced privacy features. Driver service when needed." Emma stared at him, overwhelmed by the extent of his intervention in her life. "Why are you doing all this? The job, the security, the gala tonight. Why me?" Alexander held her gaze, something complicated and unresolved in his expression. "I told you." "I see potential." "It's more than that," Emma pressed. "No one does this much for a stranger without reason." A long silence stretched between them. Finally, Alexander spoke, his voice lower, less controlled than she'd ever heard it. "When I received your text, I was in the middle of firing someone for embezzling from the foundation. A single mother of 2 who claimed she needed the money for her children. I didn't believe her, didn't care about her circumstances. Business is business. He stood again, restless energy radiating from him. Then came your message. So honest, so unvarnished. You weren't asking for a handout, you were asking for $40 for diapers, promising to pay it back. Emma watched him pace, seeing for the first time the conflict beneath his composed exterior. You reminded me of my mother, he continued, the admission clearly difficult. Not the addiction or abandonment, but the desperation. The difference is, you stayed. You fought for your child. I wanted to see what that looked like up close. The raw honesty stunned Emma into silence. Before she could formulate a response, Alexander's phone rang. He checked the screen, frowning deeply. I need to take this, he said, stepping into his study and closing the door. Emma sat alone, processing his words. Alexander King, the untouchable alpha king of business, had just revealed more vulnerability in 5 minutes than in all their previous interactions combined. She felt off balance, her perception of him shifting yet again. Inside the study, Alexander received news that would dramatically alter both their paths. James Wilson had been found, not by Alexander's investigators, but by his creditors. What they discovered had changed everything. James wasn't just Emma's ex-boyfriend and Lily's absent father. He was the estranged son of Alexander's most bitter business rival, Robert Wilson. Which meant Lily, the innocent baby sleeping in the next room, was the granddaughter of the man who had systematically tried to destroy everything Alexander had built. As Alexander processed this staggering coincidence, another piece of information struck him with the force of a physical blow. Emma's full name, Emma Louise Carter, matched records he'd seen before in a file he'd reviewed obsessively for years. A file connected to the accident that had killed his only friend in the foster system 20 years ago. The connection couldn't be coincidence. But if Emma was who he now suspected, their accidental text exchange was far from random, and her appearance in his life might be part of something much larger and more dangerous than either of them realized. Alexander stared at the closed door, knowing that on the other side sat a woman who had unwittingly walked into a decades-old web of revenge, secrets, and unresolved grief. A woman whose past might be inextricably linked with his own in ways she couldn't possibly imagine. A woman who, against all odds and his better judgment, he was beginning to care for. Emma knew something had changed the moment Alexander emerged from his study. His face, usually an impenetrable mask of control, now bore the strain of someone carrying an impossible weight. His eyes, when they met hers, contained a conflict she couldn't decipher. "Is everything all right?" she asked, rising from her seat. Alexander hesitated, a rare moment of indecision from a man who commanded boardrooms with unwavering authority. "No," he finally admitted, "but this isn't the time to discuss it. It's late." "Alexander," Emma pressed, stepping closer, "you just told me my daughter might be in danger because of her father's debts. Then you took a phone call and came out looking like you've seen a ghost. I deserve to know what's happening." He studied her face with unsettling intensity. "What do you know about your parents, Emma?" The question caught her off guard. "My parents? What do they have to do with anything?" "Humor me," he insisted, his voice taut with restrained emotion. Emma crossed her arms defensively. "Not much to tell. My father died before I was born, car accident. My mother raised me until I was 12, then she got sick, cancer. I went to live with my aunt afterward." "Your mother's name?" "Louise Carter." Emma's confusion deepened into suspicion. "Why are you interrogating me about my family?" Alexander turned away, moving to the window where the city lights mirrored the stars above. "The man on the phone was my head of security." "James Wilson has been found." Emma's heart lurched. Is he okay?" "He's alive," Alexander confirmed. "But that's not all. James Wilson isn't just some deadbeat dad who abandoned his responsibilities. He's Robert Wilson's son." The name meant nothing to Emma. "Should that mean something to me?" Alexander's laugh held no humor. "Robert Wilson is my chief competitor. For 15 years, he's tried to undermine every project, poach every client, and destroy everything I've built." Emma sank back into her chair as understanding dawned. "You think I'm part of some corporate espionage? That I deliberately texted you and engineered this whole situation?" "The thought crossed my mind," Alexander admitted, turning to face her. "The coincidence is too perfect." Anger flared in Emma's chest, hot and sudden. "Coincidence? I texted my sister for diaper money." The universe has a sick sense of humor if it connected me to you and created this mess. She stood, hands trembling with indignation. I should go. I'll have my resignation on your desk Monday. No, Alexander said sharply, moving to block her path. You can't leave. Not until we understand what's happening. There's more. Something in his tone, an urgency bordering on desperation, made Emma pause. What more could there possibly be? Alexander ran a hand through his hair, disheveling its perfect arrangement. When I was 16, I had one friend in the foster system, Michael Carter. He died in a car accident the night we both aged out of the system. The driver of the other vehicle was Louise Carter. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. That's not possible. My mother wouldn't... The accident report listed her blood alcohol level as twice the legal limit, Alexander continued, voice hollow with old pain. She had her 4-year-old daughter in the car, Emma Louise Carter. The room seemed to tilt beneath Emma's feet. No, she whispered, gripping the back of the chair for support. My mother wasn't a drunk driver. She was responsible, loving. People are rarely what they seem, Alexander said quietly. I've spent years tracking what happened that night. Your mother served 6 months for vehicular manslaughter. The judge was lenient because of you. Emma shook her head vehemently. I would remember something like that. I would have known. You were 4, Alexander reminded her gently, and adults protect children from ugly truths. Why didn't you say something when you first realized who I was? Emma demanded, struggling to reconcile this revelation with her cherished memories of her mother. Alexander's expression hardened. I didn't know until tonight. Your mother changed your middle name from Louise to Lynn in the court records. It was only when my security team ran a deeper background check because of James that they found the original birth certificate. Emma felt sick, memories shifting and realigning with this new information, the special juice her mother never let her taste, the hushed arguments with her aunt about staying clean, the way her mother had always avoided driving, even for short distances. Why tell me this now? She asked, her voice barely audible. Because I need you to understand what we're dealing with, Alexander replied, his tone softening fractionally. These connections can't be coincidental. James Wilson, son of my greatest enemy, has a child with the daughter of the woman who killed my only friend. Now you've appeared in my life through a misdirected text. Emma felt a chill run through her. You think someone planned this? That's insane. In my world, insane is Tuesday, Alexander said grimly. Robert Wilson has spent years trying to find my weaknesses. What better way than through a woman and child I might come to care about? The implication hung in the air between them, neither willing to acknowledge the admission it contained. I need to check on Lily, Emma said finally, needing escape from his piercing gaze and the weight of revelations threatening to crush her. In the guest bedroom, Lily slept peacefully, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. Emma watched her daughter's gentle breathing, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. How had her simple life unraveled so completely in just 2 weeks? From desperate single mother to central figure in some bizarre corporate vendetta, with her own history rewritten beneath her feet. When she returned to the living room, Alexander stood exactly where she'd left him, as if frozen in time by the weight of their shared past. What happens now? Emma asked wearily. Before Alexander could answer, his phone chimed with a text message. His expression darkened as he read it. Security breach in the building. We need to move, now. Emma's heart rate spiked. What? Who? No time. Alexander cut her off, already moving toward the guest room. Get Lily, we're leaving through the service elevator. Emma grabbed the diaper bag, while Alexander gently lifted the still sleeping Lily, cradling her with surprising tenderness against his chest. They moved swiftly through the penthouse to a hidden elevator at the back, Alexander punching in a security code with his free hand. My car is in the garage, he explained in hushed tones as they descended. We'll go to my lake house. It's secure, isolated. You think we're in actual danger? Emma whispered, reality still feeling surreally distant. Alexander's gaze was stone-cold serious. Robert Wilson doesn't make idle threats. If he's connected the dots between us, he'll use any leverage available. The parking garage was eerily quiet as they hurried toward a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. Alexander carefully transferred Lily to Emma's arms, then opened the passenger door. The sound of footsteps echoed across the concrete, just as Emma settled into the seat with Lily. Alexander tensed, positioning himself between Emma and the approaching figure. Mr. King. A man's voice, smooth and cultured, emerged from the shadows. A bit late for a family outing, isn't it? The man who stepped into the dim light bore a striking resemblance to James, the same aquiline nose, the same set of the jaw. But where James had always exuded boyish charm, this man radiated calculated menace. "Robert," Alexander acknowledged coldly, "breaking and entering is beneath even you." Robert Wilson smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. "Hardly breaking when one owns the security company that installed your systems." His gaze shifted to Emma and Lily in the car. "Won't you introduce me to my granddaughter?" Emma instinctively tightened her hold on Lily, who stirred but didn't wake. "Leave them out of this," Alexander warned, his voice deadly quiet. "Your quarrel is with me." "On the contrary," Robert replied, "they're very much part of this now. Did you know, Miss Carter, that your charming employer here is responsible for your boyfriend's disappearance?" Emma looked to Alexander in confusion. "He's lying," Alexander stated flatly. "I've been searching for James to protect you, not harm him." Robert's laugh echoed in the cavernous space. "Always the White Knight. Tell me, does she know about the Carter Industries acquisition, how you systematically destroyed her family's legacy after the accident?" Emma felt as if she'd been struck. "Carter Industries? My grandfather's company." Alexander's expression confirmed Robert's words before he could deny them. "It was business, Emma. I didn't know the connection until tonight." "Business," Robert echoed mockingly. "Just like it was business when you drove my son away from his child, threatened him with exposure of his gambling debts if he didn't disappear." "That's not true," Alexander snapped, but Emma caught the flicker of guilt in his eyes. The pieces fell into horrible alignment in Emma's mind. Alexander had known about James all along, had perhaps even engineered his departure, clearing the path to insert himself into their lives. "I trusted you," she whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than she would have thought possible 2 weeks ago. "Emma," Alexander began, but was interrupted by the arrival of 3 security guards, their attention focused on Robert Wilson. "Sir," one addressed Alexander, "we have the situation contained." Robert smiled thinly. "This isn't over, King. Not by a long shot." He nodded politely to Emma. "We'll speak soon, Miss Carter, about your daughter's inheritance, if nothing else." As Robert was escorted away, silence fell heavily between Emma and Alexander. Lily, disturbed by the commotion, began to whimper softly. "Get in," Emma said tightly. "We're leaving, but not to your lake house. You're taking us home." The drive to Emma's apartment was tense with unspoken accusations. Alexander made one attempt to explain, but Emma silenced him with a raised hand. "Not now. Not while I'm trying to process that everything, my mother, my grandfather's company, James leaving, even you offering me a job, might be part of some elaborate revenge plot spanning decades." When they arrived, Emma gathered Lily and her belongings with mechanical efficiency. At her door, she finally turned to face Alexander. "Was any of it real?" she asked, her voice barely steady. "The help, the job, the concern for Lily, was it all just manipulation?" Alexander met her gaze unflinchingly. "It started as curiosity, then protection, then something I didn't expect." "That's not an answer," Emma challenged. "I didn't engineer James's departure," Alexander said firmly. "But when I discovered who he was, I did investigate him. Your text message was genuinely random, a cosmic coincidence. Everything since has been my attempt to make sense of it, to protect you both from Wilson's games." "And my family's company?" Alexander's expression tightened. "That was business, before I knew you existed. Carter Industries was failing after your grandfather's death. I acquired it, restructured it, saved hundreds of jobs in the process, while erasing my family name," Emma noted bitterly. "While honoring my friend's memory in my own way," Alexander countered. "Michael wanted to be an architect. The Carter building downtown houses my architectural division." Emma shook her head, too overwhelmed to process another revelation. "I need time, space, to think about all this." "You'll have it," Alexander promised, "but you'll also have security, non-negotiable. Robert Wilson is dangerous, especially now." "Fine," Emma conceded, too exhausted to argue. "Good night, Alexander." "Emma," he called as she began to close the door. For what it's worth, I never intended to care about either of you." The admission hung between them as much a confession as Alexander King was capable of making. The following week passed in a blur of emotions and decisions. Emma took leave from her position, using the time to research everything Alexander and Robert had claimed. The truth, as always, lay somewhere in the complicated middle. Her mother had indeed caused the accident that killed Michael Carter, though court records suggested mechanical failure had contributed. Carter Industries had been on the verge of bankruptcy when Alexander acquired it, and he had indeed preserved many jobs while expanding the company's reach. And most surprisingly, bank records Emma obtained through her aunt showed that anonymous donations had funded her mother's cancer treatments, donations that coincided with Alexander's first major business success. As for James, Emma finally received a letter postmarked from Seattle. He admitted to running from gambling debts, confirmed his father's vendetta against Alexander, but denied any grand conspiracy. "I left because I was a coward," he wrote. Nothing more complicated than that. On the 7th day, Emma found herself standing outside King Tower, Lily babbling happily in her stroller. The security guards nodded respectfully as she entered, the elevator taking her directly to the executive floor without her needing to request it. Alexander looked up from his desk as she entered his office, surprise and something warmer flickering across his features before he controlled his expression. "I've been researching," Emma said without preamble, "trying to separate fact from fiction." Alexander set down his pen. "And your conclusions?" "That the past is complicated, that people make mistakes and sometimes try to atone for them in strange ways." She met his gaze steadily. "That sometimes the universe has a bizarre sense of humor, connecting people through misdirected texts and shared histories." A ghost of a smile touched Alexander's lips. "Very philosophical." "I'm not here to return to work," Emma clarified. "At least not yet. I'm here because Lily deserves to know her heritage, all of it. The good and the bad. The Carters, the Wilsons, and whatever this is between us." "And what is this between us?" Alexander asked quietly, rising from his desk. Emma considered the question carefully. "A beginning, maybe. Built on truth this time, not convenience or coincidence or corporate manipulation." Alexander moved around the desk until he stood before her, close enough that Emma could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "I'm not good at beginnings," he admitted, "or relationships, or family. Neither am I," Emma replied with a small smile. "But I'm willing to learn if you are." In response, Alexander crouched down to Lily's level, meeting the baby's curious gaze. "Hello again, little one," he said softly. Lily reached out chubby fingers toward him, a gesture of innocent trust that made Emma's heart constrict. "We could start with dinner," Alexander suggested, straightening. "The three of us. No business, no past, just getting to know each other properly." "I'd like that," Emma agreed. As they left the office together, Emma reflected on the strange path that had led them here. A desperate text message sent to a wrong number, a plea for help to buy diapers. Such a small thing to change the course of 3 lives so dramatically. Outside, spring sunshine bathed the city in golden light, promising new beginnings and second chances. Emma thought of her mother, of Michael Carter, of the tangled web of past decisions that had somehow led to this moment. Perhaps there was no such thing as coincidence. Perhaps every message found its intended recipient in the end. For the first time in months, perhaps years, Emma felt something like hope unfurling within her. Not the desperate hope of survival, but the warm, steady hope of possibility, of family found in unexpected places, of love growing from the most unlikely of circumstances. As Alexander's hand brushed against hers, Emma smiled. From mistaken text to meaningful connection, sometimes life's wrong turns led exactly where you needed to go. 6 months later, Emma stood on the balcony of Alexander's penthouse, their penthouse now watching the sunset paint the city in hues of gold and crimson. Lily, now a toddling 1-year-old, played contentedly at her feet with blocks Alexander had carved himself during a weekend at the lake house. So much had changed. Emma had returned to work, but on her own terms, splitting her time between Alexander's foundation and a new childcare center established in the redeveloped Riverside building. The center, named after Michael Carter, provided free services to single parents and foster families, Robert Wilson remained a shadow on the periphery of their lives, though his attempts to drive them apart had ultimately failed. James had returned briefly to meet Lily properly before leaving again, this time with Alexander's financial help to start fresh debt-free in Seattle. "Penny, for your thoughts." Alexander's voice came from behind her as his arms encircled her waist. Emma leaned back against him, content in a way she never could have imagined that desperate night when she'd texted for diaper money, just thinking about wrong numbers and right timing. Alexander chuckled, the sound vibrating against her back. "The best mistake I ever received, and the best response I never expected," Emma replied, turning in his arms to face him. As their lips met, Lily babbled happily, reaching up for both of them to join her play. Alexander lifted her effortlessly, his once stern face softened by genuine joy. Emma watched them together, the ruthless business titan and the innocent child who had captured his heart, and marveled at life's unexpected gifts. The Alpha King had been transformed not by power or wealth, but by a mistaken text message and the love of a woman brave enough to see beyond his walls. And Emma, once drowning in single motherhood, had found not just security but partnership, passion, and a family bigger than blood. Sometimes, she reflected, as Alexander pulled her into their embrace, the universe knew exactly what it was doing when it connected wrong numbers and right hearts.